Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, where we look at ourselves and the world through the lens of the 21st century. Hello, and welcome back to Modern Musings, the podcast where the generational gap gets real and the conversations get quirky and the coffee never runs out. Just thought I'd give that a spin.
I like that.
I'm your hostess, Kristen Blakely, and I'm with Amber Jones and Cindy Murray.
Hello.
Hello.
And today we are exploring, we're going to dive into something a little bit introspective. You know, that's what we really like to do. It's our thing. So we're going to take a look at the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI for short. So I'm sure many of you are wondering, like, when we were ever going to get to this one, because I personally think this is the first and foremost, most common one.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I guess because we've done this one already, like, by ourselves, that we kind of put it on the back burner.
Right.
And we explored the other ones
we've been
first.
looking at other ones.
And I think we had talked possibly about our types in previous episodes. So we've done the, what are the ones that we did? I always forget the Enneagram one.
The Enneagram.
Yeah,
We've done Enneagram. We did do an episode where we explored many different types of personalities, and we talked about like personality tests that we've talked in the past. Because we talked about like the big five personalities.
We've
right?
talked about that. We didn't explore it a deep dive, but we did talk about it.
But we did talk about other personalities.
And we talked about the love languages.
Oh,
also.
love
I think that was
languages.
one of the first ones we did. And
Yeah.
clutter type.
The
we
clutter
did that
bug.
one. And then we did one on which Disney princess were you, which I think uses some of these principles to
It
create
does.
a...
Absolutely.
And we kind of
Parallel.
we did the zombie apocalypse episode, which is
yep.
also kind of a personality test.
Oh, yeah. So surprisingly, here we are. We're finally getting to this one. So those of you who are silently waiting, here you go. So the Myers-Briggs test is based on psychological theories of Carl Jung, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it looks at how we
Oh, is
perceive the world.
Wait a minute.
That-
It is? This one is?
No.
I don't think it is based
That's
on
the
Jung.
archetype
The
ones.
archetypes are
Oh, okay.
based on that. Yeah.
Well, correct me, Amber, you who are getting your master's degree in such
It's
things.
based on Myers-Briggs.
Oh, yeah, that makes
it's,
sense.
Well, so it is in a way based off of a Jungian theory.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Because he started it first?
Yeah, he started it in his 1921 book, Psychological Types. He proposed that people experience the world using different functions: sensation, intuition, thinking, feeling,
Okay.
which is the basis of Myers-Briggs, pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think they later broke it down into 4 traits: introvert, extrovert, thinking, feeling, and so on.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're going to explore.
So Myers and Briggs based it on Jung's, collective consciousness.
Okay.
Got it. A collective consciousness.
Yeah,
That's
which
what
we
it's
did
called.
an episode about that a
Like
few episodes
a
ago.
couple
yeah.
of
Yeah, a
episodes,
couple.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, Amber, one of my questions was, where do they use these tools? Like, I see people like going online, but aren't they used like in a practical sense in some places?
Well, they're used a lot in a counseling sense. Like when you start, especially if somebody comes to you in counseling and they're wanting more of like a mental health or personality based type of counseling, you typically give one of the first sessions. Yeah, I was going to say episodes. One of the first sessions that you talk to somebody about, a counselor typically gives you a personality test. Now, there are, of course, as we've discussed before, many different personality tests. This one is also used a lot in an educational setting as well, where school counselors give this test to their students or like a specific class that they are teaching. and they're wanting to learn the different personalities of their students.
Right. And I've taken it in marriage counseling, in premarital counseling, I should specifically say. Before my husband and I got married, the pastor who married us, we had to have, premarital counseling, and that was one of the first things we did. He gave us this test, and then that gave him some grounds to give us counseling on how we were going to interact with each other over the course of our marriage. So
it's a good test, like a basis as far as like personality and interaction. You can go to 16personalities.com and take it yourself, or if you go to counseling or marital therapy, it is one of the tests in a counselor's arsenal to give a client.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel like that was a good topic for us to discuss because, we're talking about, how we can live more intentionally, grow, and develop, hitting our goals.
Right.
Whether it's like personal or professional or relationship
right.
goals.
And there's a lot of things you can learn about your goal setting, your goal achievement, by looking at your personality type and the way that you learn and the way that you function in the world. So, if you're a thinker, then you're going to be more analytical and you're going to need more straightforward, probably steps or whatever. But if you're more of a feeler, then, and we'll get into those, but then you might be more apt to fly by the seat of your pants a little more.
Yeah.
Or something.
Well, and that's why I'm glad, Amber, you shared the link. We all took our tests today.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we had all taken our tests a while back. It was kind of interesting because we each found that we were a little different than previous times that we had taken it. And Amber was like, we should do this like every year just to see like where you're at each time. And I agreed with that. I feel like even maybe more often because your season of your life can change.
Right.
And your mindset changes based on what's important, what your values are at that time.
Right.
Or even how you're feeling at that time.
Or how much growth you've experienced.
Right.
If you're a shy person, initially you can learn to overcome that and become a more outgoing person.
Yeah.
And that will change your answers to the questions.
Yeah. And I liked that website she shared because one of the things, and we'll go over like our results here in a second, but one of the things that it talked about was what your strengths and weaknesses are. And when I was looking at the weaknesses, because of my personality type, I went straight to the weaknesses so that I could beat myself up about them. No, I actually wanted to see like what those were because those are the things that keep you from hitting your goals or having meaningful relationships or maybe hinder you in the workplace. So I'm excited to go in and take a look at our results. And I'll spoil it a little and say that funny thing is we're all very similar. We got almost the same results. So then I was like, well, even though we're three different women from different backgrounds, we come together because we're introspective and we're nurturing, we're empathetic, and so we got very similar scores. So we're going to have to kind of like explain the other personality types from our, maybe some other people that we know in our lives. And I'm hoping that maybe some of our listeners will chime in with their personality types and their comparisons if they have different personality types than what we have.
Right.
Or interestingly enough, I'm also curious to find out if our listeners are also similar personality types.
That's a curious
because
thing, yeah.
I think that like we kind of like birds of a feather flock together because you kind of understand each other. And I think that's one of the things that makes us, come together easily is that even though we're, generally introverts, and we had talked about this before, like introvert versus extrovert, we still, even though we're introverts, we understand each other because, we're introverts. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
It's introverts often find themselves friends with other introverts because.
And don't you find it odd that we're all three introverts, and yet we have a
Podcast.
podcast where we share.
It's anonymous.
That's
though.
that's
It's
because we're
almost
online,
anonymous though.
Like
It's
we
we're
don't go in
behind the
person
curtain.
and talk about
We
this
are
stuff.
the Wizards of Oz because we're behind the curtain, and
True that.
we're not seen. We're just heard.
Right.
And I think talking to like a blank wall, although I'm talking to
you're really
an
only
infinite number of people.
You're really only
I'm
talking to me and Amber.
Exactly.
So you're,
Exactly. But somewhere deep in my mind, I know that someone else is listening. So it helps in that way. So without further ado, let's take a look at our results. So I figured, Mom, you should go first since you
I took the one
yours
long ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one that I ever took was in 1988 when Mark and I decided to get married. And as I said, my the pastor who married us gave us this test. And oddly enough, we were very similar in a lot of things. But I turned out, I will kind of, I am an extrovert, intuitive, feeler, and perceptive. That was what I was back then. Now, let me give some like view of that. When it says that I am an extrovert, I guess there were 29 points. And of the, well, I don't know how many points there were, but I wound up with 15 points for extroversion and 14 points for introversion. So, and as we talked about on our extrovert, introvert episode that we discussed, I feel like I'm actually an ambivert or an omnivert, however you want to look at it. I can't remember the difference between the two. It's very subtle. But I am a person who is somewhat comfortable getting up in front of people. I'm a performer. I was a musician. I got up in front of people and performed all the time. And I didn't have problems talking to people that I didn't know. Not hard problems. But I also like being on my own. So I like to be around people and be the center of attention or whatever for a little while. And then I like to be left alone. So I want what I want when I want it, but I am both. So that I think is very, it explains some things too about how I've changed over time. As far as the sensing versus intuition, I was way, way, way over on the intuition. I'm very intuitive, which I also find very interesting because we've talked about our intuitive nature and how I tend to tone mine down and have turned it off sometimes.
And you just stick with the facts.
Yes. And then as thinking and feeling, there was less points on there, so I was probably in the middle a lot, but I was more feeling than thinking at that time. And then I was way more perceptive than judging. So, and like I say, like on the intuition, the perceptive and the intuition were like way heavily weighted to one side. So I thought that was really interesting. And I will, as a comparison, my husband took the same test and he was an intuitive, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. He was an introvert, far on the introvert scale. He was an intuitive, far on the intuitive. He was a thinker, far on the thinking scale rather than feeling. And then he was balanced on the judging and perceptive. I mean, equal 13 and 13. That was his score. So, we were very similar because I could have easily have been an I if I'd have changed one question differently. I would have been an I. We're both intuitive and we were both perceptive, but that thinking and feeling, which is also kind of interesting because as a woman, you tend to think you're probably more
of the feeling. Mm-hmm.
And with a man, more of the thinking and the
yin
logic.
And yang of
yes,
that.
yes. So I thought that was kind of interesting with that. Now, I will say I took this test again, maybe 3 years ago. I'm not exactly sure. And I wound up as an ESTJ. So I was still an extrovert, but I was more of a sensor than an intuitive. And I changed from being a feeler to a thinker. So there's where I was talking about how I had shut down my feelings and my intuitive senses and started going with the more logical things, right?
What age were you when you took that?
Like I said, it was only like 3 or 4 years ago. So
okay.
It would have been before COVID. Before I started dabbling with metaphysical things again. So that may be a partial clue to that. And I was also a judger. So I was still a judger. So I completely changed everything except for the
you changed your facts and feelings on both of those.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the S is concrete facts and details, and the T is the thinker, is logic and objectivity,
right.
which bases that on the S. Like your thinking is based on the sensing.
Right.
Right.
And it really and I was still an extrovert, but I changed all of my things. I completely was the opposite of what I was when I was in my early 20s. And I think a lot of that is more about me shutting down my own personal nature, not trusting my own instincts, not listening to my intuition,
putting your feelings aside for others.
Thinking with my head instead of thinking with my heart. Now, in that time, I have, like today, in that time between that one and today, I've also gone through a lot of change, a lot of emotional and mental growth, and a lot of things have happened to me. My dad died, my sister died, my niece came to live with me. We had our friend Coy who came to live with me. My mother came to live with me. My mother has Alzheimer's and I had to put her in a home. Then my husband got cancer and he passed away. And also in that time, I became more involved in the metaphysical and I started trying to go back to trusting my own intuition more because I spent so much of my life shutting it down because people told me I made bad decisions. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't using my head. You get all the things here that are related to that, right? And so I started trying to be more logical about things and using my head and thinking rather than feeling and all those things. And so I have since started to feel a little more, to sense, maybe not sense, but use my intuition a little more. But I'm still in that judgment kind of area. So I'm still growing. I'm still trying to go back. But now I am also a lot more introverted. I am an intuitive. I am a feeler. So I went back to being a feeler, back to being an intuitive, but I'm still a judgment. I can't remember what is the word for that? A judger?
Sure.
Yeah, a judger. That's what they call it. I'm still a judger, and I'm still introverted, but again, when I look at my introversion, if I look at the score, I'm only 52% introverted. So I still think I'm on that cusp of being either or, just depending on what questions they ask and how they ask them. So I think I fluctuate between the introvert, extrovert. Thus, I am an omnivert or whatever it is. But all of my other, the one that I took in between a few years ago, all of my scores were heavily towards, like, I got 0 on the intuitive, which is kind of weird because the first test I took, I was far, far, far into the intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with the perceptive. I was far, far, far into the perceptive, and I was on the one that I took in between. I had no perceptive scores, so I'm just it's very interesting to me that it changed, but I think it does change over time, and I think it's pretty accurate for who I was at that time. I don't think that the test has been inaccurate in that it changed all those times. I think that's who I was at that time when I took that test. Now, Kristen she found some labels for those results, and like the first one that I took was called the campaigner, the ENFP.
Well, on the website, it calls them archetypes.
Right.
So, like the 16 personalities, there are 16
Archetypes, right. Mm-hmm. And so that archetype is the campaigner. And I look back at myself in my 20s, and I was in college. I was a founding member, the founding member of one of our class organizations that we started. I was kind of one of the heads of my class, and I was always doing things and leading people. So, in that, and I was very open and extroverted, very open and extroverted and kind of idealistic. So I would campaign for, we need a better program. I started this club for our audio engineering group. We had previously had a different club, but that club wasn't doing anything for us. So we started another club, and I was kind of instrumental in starting that club. So, and I campaigned for that club so that we could have more different things. When we get down to the test that I took in between, that archetype was called the executive. And it goes into that I was the head of our house. Well, not head of our household, but I ran our household. I had to be very logical. I was taking care of the business of the household, all those things, and trying to be very critical, analytical, logical, all those things. So that makes sense. And then now I fall under the archetype of advocate, which I feel like that's kind of where I am, especially like with the Modern Musings podcast, because I advocate for, self-awareness and self-help and, personal growth and things like that. And so, and I do that with my friends as well. So I think those fit me very, very well. What about you guys?
Well, Kristen and I actually got the same result.
Really?
This time around.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We both got the INFP.
Okay. So we are, as Kristen mentioned, we are all very similar. It's just that J versus the P, the perceptive.
Well,
or the perceiver.
Mm-hmm. So every other time that I have taken this test before today,
Mm-hmm.
I have gotten INFJ.
Okay.
Which I haven't taken this test in probably about 4 years.
Uh-huh.
So, or longer.
But you also have you've been working on all these psychology classes.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah, so I guess I moved from judging to, as they call it, prospecting.
Okay.
So I'm more open-minded now than I was, say, several years ago.
And I think, too, the J also gets a little misconstrued because we hear the word judging and we think about making assessments and judging people.
I'm
it's
judging you.
Judging, J prefers structure and planning.
Mm-hmm.
Perceiving prefers flexibility and spontaneity.
Which I see in Amber.
Totally
I see
Amber.
both of you, actually. I am very much a planner.
Yeah.
So, how did, I guess, at the time in the past that I've taken the test, I was more of a planner and less spontaneous, and now
But you kind of have to be more of a planner in some sense when you take it. Like, if you're in a mode in your life where you need to buckle down and stay structured.
Right, which is what happened to me.
When you take that test, your mindset in that moment is, yes, I prefer to have a detailed task to-do list. And yes, I prefer to have a rigid structure.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that rigid structure, you're hard on yourself.
Right.
That was one of the questions I came across. It was like, do you... something about do you continue a task and not give yourself rest until you continue the task?
Right.
And I was like, but I sometimes I beat myself up for being lazy, and then I realized, oh, I'm only beating myself up because I feel like I should be doing something until, and not resting until it's completed. And so when I am resting and it's not completed, 100% of the time I feel like I should be working and then get rest. So I was like, strongly agree when I really analyzed the question.
Right. And you're talking about that difference between the J and the P is a big difference for me in my life, because at the time I was a P, I was a young college student. And I was unmarried. I was in a relationship. Obviously I was engaged, and I had Kristen, but I really didn't have any accountability to anything except me and Kristen and my relationship with Mark. I wasn't in it. I did have part-time jobs, but I was a lot more free to fly by the seat of my pants.
Yeah, and go, ooh, that sounds like fun. Let's go
do it. Let's go do it. Right. And so, but then, as I became a mother, the homemaker, or had jobs, or became the homemaker or whatever, I switched that into that judger mode where I didn't just want that structure. I needed that structure. I needed to be able to make plans because I had to work around, the schedule of my husband, and 2 kids. And so I did a lot more planning, and I still, as we've talked about many times on this episode, I am still very much a planner. I like to have a structure. I like to have a set routine and stick to it. And if my routine gets disrupted, I'm kind of thrown off a little bit. It takes me a while to get back in it. And part of that is my ADD too. And maybe that was some of my coping skills that I learned to deal with my ADD, was becoming more structured, more rigid about those things. Helped me to do that. But I can see how I've changed in my life and became more J than P.
Yeah. Like you said, or like Kristen said, mine is more of like what I'm feeling at the time. Because I'm just not like 100% always fly by the seat of my pants. I do like to have like some basic skeletal structure of what I'm doing and where I'm going.
But you're also young, married, no kids, no obligations. So that makes it a little easier, I think, for you to be a P.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Than a J, because, you and Jason can go do what you want to do without that structure. I would be curious
like the
to see
type thing.
how Kristen's would have changed. Did you take one while you were married to Travis at all?
Yeah, I had taken one multiple times, and I always got INFJ, which is interesting because I think, like, in my younger years, my actions were more of a P, but my mindset is a J.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the things that, like, I focus on that one a lot because I think that's where I kind of, like, combat myself.
Right.
You know, kind of alluding to what I was just saying earlier is that, like, I need that structure. I desire it. I'm always seeking to have it. But then my actions are
The P.
the P.
Mm-hmm.
So although I find those valuable and important, I struggle with
Actually doing
adhering to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those people who find themselves like, what was that other thing we talked about? The 4 personalities, being an obliger or
right.
a rebel.
The 5. The big
Yeah.
5. Uh-huh.
Being able to like actually make myself do what's important to me, sticking to my values versus the outside influences and things like that. Because I think a lot of the things that make me be spontaneous and flexible are the outside influences. And that also goes back to when you're looking at the breakdown of the personalities, that's the S and the N. So sensing is focusing on concrete facts and details. So being able to stick to the plan
Mm-hmm.
is being an S. Someone
Right.
who is strong in that would be an S.
Right.
Or the T versus F, because thinking is making decisions with logic and objectivity, and
Mm-hmm.
F is making decisions based on values and how it affects people.
Right.
So when this is an opportunity versus sticking to the plan, I often will find myself changing the plan
Mm-hmm.
because it affects other people.
Right. Right.
Because I'm a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
And because I also see like opportunities that I'm persuaded by other people's emotions because I'm empathetic, that, you know, you could sell me ice if I lived in, you know, Greenland. I would
Yeah.
buy it if you tried to sell it to me, because if you're a good salesperson and we connect
Right.
on a personal level,
You're-
I'll buy
you
it
have
from
that feeling.
you.
Yeah.
So I make decisions based on how it affects other people, and people can persuade my values. Not to say like I like bend to my values and morals, but I'm also open to debate the possibilities
Right.
of changing my mind and
Right.
my perception of things,
Mm-hmm.
which is being flexible and spontaneous also. Because if someone said, hey, you know, there's 2 sides to that coin, and this, I was talking about this off the mic earlier, that to me, judging, I also thought of like 2 sides to a coin, whereas like you're seeing the structure of this is reality and it's one dimensional.
Right.
But to be able to see the other side of the coin is that flexibility in a P.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because of me just getting older and understanding myself better and understanding how I interact with other people, times where I have been like adamant in my belief and I opened my mouth first and then went, wow, that was really dumb. Like, I didn't think about the other side of that situation or how other people felt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what the reality is. I just saw what my reality was.
Right.
And now that I'm older, I can see there are other realities for
Mm-hmm.
other people. And so I think that's where the judging versus perceiving
Right.
has why I have changed from a J to a P.
Uh-huh.
But I've always been an introvert. I've always been an intuition,
Uh-huh.
seeing the patterns and possibilities. Because to me, the patterns and possibilities are the facts,
Right.
right?
Right.
And even though possibilities are not actual like facts that happened in the past, they're potential
Mm-hmm.
things that could happen, which to
Right.
me, that is the possibility. Like,
Right.
I don't limit myself on just the future possibilities now. And maybe because I'm understanding that part of myself more, that it's just not just what I believe, but all the other things unseen that could be possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my intuition part of me is stronger now
Right.
because of that.
Okay.
Like, I've opened my possibilities more.
Right.
I've always been like one to like be a devil's advocate. I love to
Mhm.
argue like the different
Me too.
possibilities.
Me too.
And I say argue. I don't like to like
It's
argue
not arguing.
them.
It's debating.
But it's not even debating. Even I just want to explore them. Like, I love
Right.
Seeing
talking
things
to
from
pe-
different perspectives.
I love talking to people about like a scenario. Like, watch a movie and then say like, wow, what if like society was like this and like that, and you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to find people who like understand that, because otherwise they just think you're trying to argue.
Right,
But,
right.
yeah, I'm not just arguing. I'm just exploring. Like, I want to touch all the
I do
corners
that
of
too.
the world.
I do that too.
You know, in my mind.
I can always, in fact, I was telling somebody about this the other day. Well, maybe, no, it was probably Amber, that when we took the, like the tests, no, I think it was in my, I don't remember. Anyway, when you take those tests in high school and it tells you what you would be good at, you know?
Oh, yes.
When I took the whatever it was, it said I would have been a good judge. And I said, I know that because, or not a judge, a lawyer. I said, I know that because I can argue a point whether I believe it or not.
That's so funny. I got a similar result when I
Yeah.
took that in high school.
Because I don't
Mine
have
said
to believe
police
it.
officer.
Yeah, I don't have to believe it to argue the point because I can do it based on the facts. And, you know, I don't know if that's I don't know where that falls in to what I am, but
a lawyer.
well, but my mother used to say that I could argue with a fence post because it wasn't that I was really arguing.
mine
I was
too.
just saying, well, what about this side of it? Have you thought about looking at it from that point of view? And I do that a lot when I'm talking to people who have a very strong point of view about something. There's this part of me that wants to say, but have you looked at it from
Haven't
this side?
explored all the angles.
Yeah,
Well,
have
that's
you
what
looked at
makes
the other
you a
side of
good
it?
advocate. That's like
Yeah.
why you fall on this.
Maybe
because
so.
you can see it from
I can see
all of
other
those
people's
different
points of
sides.
view. Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe
Even
so.
if those points of view haven't even come to light.
Right, right.
And I think that's the intuitive versus sensing, and the thinking versus feeling.
Right.
So, you know, whether you're like strong on the thinking side, you still make some decisions
Oh, absolutely.
based on values and how it affects people, because you take the data that you've experienced in your life and said, this affects people this way, this affects people that way. Then your brain converts that into facts.
Right.
That's logic.
Right.
And now you use it as thinking, and that's how you rule your decision making based on.
Yeah. But I'm actually a feeler, not a thinker now.
You are. Yeah.
I am now. But still, same thing. It really is. The intuitive, the feeling. Yeah. I take into account how people feel, and that's where I look at that other side of that coin. Well, you feel this way, but have you thought about how that person feels?
Mm-hmm.
You
And
know.
somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, there's an old adage about the truth is there's your version, this person's version, and the truth is actually somewhere in the middle of that, because we all perceive things differently. And yeah.
So you said your nickname was the Advocate currently.
Yes,
You're
yes.
an INFJ. And that's
Yes.
so interesting. You're an INFJ now, and that's what Amber and I used to be,
Mm-hmm.
but we're INFPs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now mediators.
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 Okay. Well, and that's interesting because mediator and advocate,
Or they're very similar.
very similar, and they kind of work together.
Yes, Advocate is really pushing for the one side.
Right.
Yeah.
Whichever side
Whatever side it is.
Right.
But the mediator is like, okay, guys,
So
we got to
you're-
come
I'm just
together.
and again, I'm one step away from what you are.
Yeah.
I only had one letter of difference, so they're very similar.
Well, see, looking from my results, I am one step away from being an advocate. Like I said, I used to be an advocate, and now currently, right now, today in my life, I'm a mediator. And before that, I've always been the advocate. But as Kristen said, I do feel like that they also go hand in hand. An advocate, you would just take things to the next level and, really push and advocate for things, while mediators, you're just like,
The
okay,
mediator
let's
stays
calm down.
neutral.
Let's be neutral.
The mediator stays neutral and tries to expose both sides.
Yeah.
Whereas the advocate is taking the opposite of the side. Like if there's two sides, it chooses to be the other side of the coin.
And I feel like in different aspects of my life, I wear both hats. A lot of times I like to say like a good neutral. I like to listen to everybody's point of view before I go for like the judgment or whatever. And but there are certain aspects of my life, like education, for example, that I am more of an advocate, and I will step out and go, like bang the signs on the Capitol. Actually, I don't know if I would go and do that, but I could.
Yeah.
Like because I do feel strongly about that topic, and how it relates to children and everything like that. Whereas I'm not going to sit back and be like, well, I see the side of this person versus the side of the child. I will always advocate for the children.
Right. Well, and you were, when we were talking about that and you started talking, I thought, me versus who I was before. The first test I took was a campaigner, which is also closely related to the advocate, except that a campaigner is an extrovert and a
when
perceiver.
You said nailing something on the Capitol door, I was thinking, oh, that's the campaigner.
That's the campaigner.
You wouldn't do that necessarily because you're an introvert, but an extrovert would have
extrovert would do that. And
go and stand at the Capitol with the picket lines and push for educational reform.
And I have gone from being the person who campaigned to
the keyboard warrior.
Well, an advocate.
We are. Is that what an advocate is? A keyboard warrior?
So what are the other archetypes?
Oh, yes.
there?
Okay. So, and it's interesting because it breaks them all down. If you don't mind, I'd like to read them all out so that listeners might identify which ones they are if they took the test already.
Well, and they may identify even without taking the test.
So I'm going to start with it. They're organized based on introverts first. So ISTJ is the inspector, responsible, detail-oriented, loyal, values tradition and order. ISFJ is the nurturer, caring, dependable, practical, strong sense of duty and service. INFJ, the advocate, insightful, empathetic, idealistic, deeply values meaning and purpose. The INTJ, the mastermind, strategic, independent, analytical, values competence and vision. ISTP, the virtuoso, curious, hands-on, analytical, thrives on troubleshooting and action. ISFP, the composer, quiet, artistic, spontaneous, deeply connected to their values. INFP, the mediator. That's the one we just talked about. Idealistic, compassionate, introspective, guided by strong inner moral compass. INTP, the architect.
That's Mark.
Analytical, inventive, introspective, loves theory and deep thought. ESTP. So now we're into the extroverts. Okay. So all of the other same personalities, but with an extroverted twist, as you can say. So ESTP, the dynamo or dynamo.
Oh.
I liked this one when I read it. I was like, wow, that is so not me. Energetic, perceptive, action-oriented, and lives in the moment. ESFP, the entertainer, fun-loving, outgoing, spontaneous, thrives on excitement and connection. ENFP, the campaigner. So enthusiastic, imaginative, sociable, loves possibilities and people. ENTP, the debater. Clever, curious, idea-driven, loves challenges and debates. ESTJ, the executive. Organized, efficient, decisive, natural leaders and managers. ESFJ, the provider. Warm, cooperative, consensuous, values harmony and tradition. ENFJ, the protagonist. Charismatic, inspiring, supportive, natural motivators. ENTJ, the commander, bold, strategic, assertive, driven to lead and achieve goals. And I would really like to see all of these broken down into those 9 Enneagrams, because I'm seeing a lot of these things like fitting the Enneagrams. That's how my mind goes, like, ooh, I'd like to see them like broken down in comparison to those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 9, because I remember like 9 being a leader, right? And like 4 being the artist, because I saw like the artist type in there, Right. And I could see where, there's the artist type person that's the one that's ISFP is the composer, the quiet, artistic, spontaneous, deeply connected to their values. And then you have the ESTP, which is the energetic, perceptive, action-oriented, lives in the moment, and the ESFP, the entertainer. So there's the composer, and then there's the entertainer. Sorry, that's the one I meant. Fun-loving, outgoing, spontaneous, thrives on excitement. I feel like those are so like opposite.
Well, but then there's also the architect, the INTP, which is only 2 flipped from the composer, I believe. Right. So because the architect builds things just in the same, just in different ways than the composer creates things. Yeah.
Okay. So, Kristen, I used ChatGPT to break down Myers-Briggs Personality Types in like 2.5 seconds into the Enneagram.
Yes. I love ChatGPT.
Okay. So, the ISTJ is often a reformer, a loyalist, or an investigator.
Interesting.
Yeah. An ISFJ is often a 2, 6, or 9, the helper, the loyalist, and the peacemaker.
It's the nurturer. Those make sense.
That was the INFJ?
That's the ISFJ.
Oh, ISFJ.
The INFJ is often a 4, 1, or 9, a reformer, an individualist, or a peacemaker.
And that's called
I
the
am a number 1.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the INTJ is often a 5, 1, or 8, and that's an investigator, a reformer, or a challenger.
That's called the mastermind.
And then the ISTP is often a 5, 9, or 8, and that's the investigator, the peacemaker, or the challenger.
That's the virtuoso.
And the ISFP is often a 9, 4, or 6, a peacemaker, an individualist, or a loyalist.
That's the composer.
Okay. Where am I at now?
INFP is next.
Okay, so the INFP is a 4, 9, or 6, and that's individualist, peacemaker, or loyalist.
That's the mediator.
And then the INTP is a 5, 9, or 4. That's an investigator, a peacemaker, or individualist.
That's the architect.
Yeah. Okay, the ESTP is a 7, 8, or 3, enthusiast, challenger, or achiever.
That's the dynamo. That makes so much sense, because when I saw that, I was like, that's a 7. Lives in the moment.
An ESFP is a 7, 2, or 3. That's an enthusiast, helper, or achiever.
That's the entertainer.
Let's see. I just did the ESFP right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm getting like off because there's so many. There's like 16 personalities, right?
Right.
The ENFP is a 7, 4, or 9. That's an enthusiast, individualist, or peacemaker.
That's the campaigner.
And then the ENTP is a 7, 3, or 8. That's an enthusiast, achiever, or challenger.
That's the debater.
Okay, where did I leave off?
You need ESTJ.
ESTJ is a 1, 3, or 8. And
Wow.
that's a reformer, achiever, and challenger.
That's the executive.
Okay, and then the ESFJ is a 2, 3, or 6. And that's the helper, the achiever, or the loyalist.
And that's the provider.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ENFJ is often a 2, 3, or 1. And that's the helper, the reformer, or the achiever.
That's the protagonist.
Okay. And then, achiever, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ENTJ is the 8, 3, is an 8, 3, or 1. And that is the challenger, the achiever, and the reformer.
Oh my gosh. That's funny because that one's called the commander. That's literally like all of the like hardcore leader.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So yeah, that's the Enneagram breakdown of the Myers-Briggs personality types. I thought that was
Thanks,
pretty
Amber.
cool.
That was like
Yeah,
crossing
that was-
my mind, and I was like, I'd
That
really
was-
like to analyze this.
It was really interesting because I looked at that, like the one that I am now, the advocate, the INFJ advocate, came across as the 4, 1, or 9. I am actually a 1. So, but it could have been also the artist. I'm a perfectionist, but it could have been the artist or the mediator. And like, that was what I was talking about before, how the mediator is kind of closely related to the, we're just one letter off, you know?
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. And again, I look back at what I was. I don't know what my Enneagrams were when I was younger, but if I look at my Myers-Briggs, and then compared to that mediator, I'm looking and going, yeah, that's who I was back then. So
Very cool. Very cool. Hopefully we'll get some messages from listeners
Yeah.
that'll let us know what their archetypes are.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we get a wide variety of different. We should do a poll.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Poll
on
up
our
there.
MMC chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Actually, before I wrap it up, I did find a table showing each of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types along with their estimated frequency. Based on various studies from the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
And the most common estimated frequency is ISFJ. That's 13.8%, based on all 16, right? So the percentages are going to be smaller. But ISFJ is the most common. And the most infrequent is an INFJ at 1.5%.
That's the what? The INFJ is
You're
the
the most rare.
rarest. Yeah.
wow. And that's what I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to be. And I could definitely feel why I might not have felt like I fit in with the in crowd or the majority of people's mindsets, and ways that they made decisions and how they live their lives. Because I could see where if majority of the people you're around are, ISFJs, and you're, an INFJ, or if your whole family is S and you're an N, how that could make things more challenging to see eye to eye with people, or P.
But I also think that as you get older, I don't know.
Might find yourself swaying one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though it's the rarest, you're more comfortable being just who you are.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
In some ways. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, more food for thought. Looking forward to your blog on it.
From my blog?
Yeah.
I'm the only one who ever writes anything, right? Right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's because Amber and I are P's, and you hold yourself accountable to that rigid.
I do.
And we're like, I got better things to do.
Well,
Don't
and
we?
I advocate, so
always-
I'm trying to advocate for, people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. I enjoyed that.
Me too.
Another fun thing to learn about. I strongly encourage you to go and take the test, though. One of the things we didn't really touch on was those strengths and weaknesses. I kind of mentioned them earlier, but on that website, it breaks them down in your personal life, your work life, and relationships.
Right.
And I think personal life was more like goals and,
Right.
personal development. You yourself, and then your work life, how you are impacted by those traits in the work setting,
Right.
Versus in your relationship settings. I liked reading that because it was very eye-opening to see things that I knew about myself, but just have something else acknowledge it, and saying like one of my weaknesses is like, people pleasing. Like I already knew that.
You're a people pleaser.
I know I'm a people pleaser, but just to have that validated on like the fifth source that told me that, it's like, okay, obviously that's, it's a strength and a weakness in a relationship. And it's also in the workplace. It talked about how being a leader and how that can be a strength or a weakness.
Yeah.
And one of the things I saw too was how I might be really passionate about an idea, but I'm less likely to put my idea out there because I'm humble and
you're not going to campaign for
I'm not going to campaign for my idea. I'm humble and I'm going to keep it in.
Right.
And I might say, well, I kind of have a good idea, but I don't think it'll really work.
And the leadership thing, good leaders rarely make good followers.
Good leaders rarely make good followers. Huh.
I mean, think about it. If you're a really good leader, you often don't follow.
A good leader makes good other leaders.
Right.
Because they teach other people how to be leaders in their own self.
But they don't follow very well.
They don't make good followers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you mean by they don't make good followers, not they don't create other people to be followers.
Good leaders aren't good followers. That's the better way to say that. Yeah. Yeah. Which can be a detriment in a workplace.
And it can be if you're a leader type who doesn't listen to other people's opinions.
You're in middle management.
And be willing to try other people's ideas.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of the types have their strong points and their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And this is something I addressed on my was it on the Enneagram blog? No, it wasn't. It was on it was a more recent blog. I will link it in the podcast when I find it. But I talked about being a perfectionist, a number one, and how people correct me and say, I can't fix everybody. I can't fix everything. But if that is who you are, that is who you are. So it's not that you need to change who you are or fix it or swing the other way. But maybe knowing that that's who you are can help you grow in a way that you temper that so that you're more in the middle. Like me with the introvert extrovert. I've learned over time I was more in the middle of that. And so I can operate in either place. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so it's not that we need to change ourselves, it's that we need to expand ourselves. So knowing that you are an INFP doesn't mean you need to stop being a perceiver, but maybe you need to temper those things so that you're less of a perceiver, more of a judger, just more in the middle.
Right.
Less of a feeler, more of a thinker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things I saw, avoidance of routine. So this is in personal growth. So this would go with the judging and perceiving. Because judging is the to-do lists and the plans. So it says avoidance of routine is one of my weaknesses. Consistency and structured habits do not come naturally. It's not that it's not that I'm against them. They just don't come naturally.
You have to work at it.
And so making disciplined goals challenging. So how do you set goals to make them smart goals, make them achievable, knowing that you need to be also disciplined as well. Right. So maybe setting goals of being disciplined.
Right.
Or setting easy to achieve goals.
And
easy to achieve goals that are part of habit stacking and routine building.
Right.
So that you're working that muscle.
And then you slide that P slightly, ever so slightly to the J. Maybe not out of the P. You don't want to be not a P. You are who you are.
Yeah.
But maybe slide it a little, because that's something you struggle with. Slide it a little more to the other direction. Same thing with the introvert extrovert. If you are so introverted that it causes you problems in your social life or in making friends or whatever, try your thing is to slide that a little to the E.
Right.
A little to the extrovert. Or the feeling and thinking. Maybe you make all your judgments based on how you feel or how people feel, and you're not thinking about the logic. You know, maybe
one of those says sensitive to external opinions. You may unintentionally give too much weight to others' judgments when assessing yourself.
Right. And so then maybe give a little more weight to the logic or the facts rather than listening to other people's opinions or you know. And like I say, I'm not saying I don't want to change who I am. I don't want to be go back to being an introvert, an ENFP or whatever, or an ESTJ. I just want to not be so stuck so far in that direction, that it makes it hard for me to reach my goals or do what I need to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and that's the lesson in that is to understand who you are and what areas you need to work on, but not in a way to change yourself, but just enough to make it easier to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Or to find different ways to do it.
Yeah. Not changing yourself, but being more open. Yeah. I like that. Being just open. Not open to blah, 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 but just being more open.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we are doing a kind of a fun topic, and I've titled it Better With It or Without It. And it'll be kind of a surprise. We'll let you know. Just show up and you can answer the questions for yourself. Better with it or without.
And be open.
And be open. Okay. All right. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a listener and coming back every week. We mentioned some blog posts. You can hit us up on, or you can check out our blog posts on modernmusings.net. And we also have our chat where you may see a poll.
I will work on trying to get a poll on there.
Yeah, we'll get a poll up for you. And that would be on Facebook, which is MMC Chat.
Yes, but I think I don't know if you can search directly for MMC Chat. The easiest way to find it is to go to our MMC page.
I think you can
on Facebook.
Just search directly for MMC Chat.
Okay, MMC Chat is the group name.
Where you can actually
interact with us, yes.
Because our Facebook page it only lets us post. It's a business page. So
but you can get to either one from our website, which is technically our blog, but it's the website, which is modernmusings.net. Net, not com. Net.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to connecting again. And thank you so much. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.